Hey everybody, welcome to our Unit 3 introduction video here. You can see here in the unit header that our three chapters this time are chapters 8, 9, and 11. Okay, let's take a look at the first one here, chapter 8, which is really about two sides of the gender coin, and that's gender identity and gender roles. So part of what we're going to start out with in this chapter is clarification of what we mean by gender versus sex, because they're not the same, and also what we mean by gender identity versus one's gender role. And so some real distinction to be made there. And I imagine all of you have heard about how gender is one of these concepts, at least in modern times, even though it's been around for thousands of years. We are acting like we discovered something and now looking at people as being non-binary, etc. Well, some cultures, as you'll learn, have been doing that for quite a long time, and we're actually just kind of catching up to all that. We're not really discovering anything new like it may appear to from our own Western perspective. Now we're going to drill down into both gender identity and gender roles in turn here. And when we get to gender identity, we're going to take a look at both the biological and social influences on it there. We're going to take a look at some disorders of sex development. When it comes to the biological influences, not everybody has a clean, or I should say clear-cut path to identifying themselves as either female or male or something other than that. And so we have to take a look at those disorders, which are very fascinating things, and also the issue of being transgender, which I imagine all of you have heard of these days. There's some pretty famous people out there now about that. And also we're going to take a look, because this is a psychology course, we're going to take a look at the why of gender identity. How do we actually get it? And so theories of gender identity, which I really want you to know well for the exam, so pay careful attention to that. We're also going to take a look at gender roles. And like we just said for gender identity, we're going to take a look at theories of gender roles and also the intriguing issue of gender stereotypes. Once you understand what a gender role is, you can probably quickly realize that, yep, some people are going to be pretty stereotyped about these roles as they're known as. So we'll take a look at all that. Now, the next chapter in this unit here is sexual orientation, chapter 9. And so first off the bat there, we're going to take a look at what sexual orientation is and really what it isn't. You're going to find out that it's not just one thing. It's not just solely about the erotic or a physical attraction to others, but it's also the affectional, what's in your heart, who you fall in love with, in other words. It's a combination, a combo deal of both the erotic and the affectional, which many persons don't really kind of realize there. We're also going to be taking a look at how we measure sexual orientation. There's been different ideas proposed around that, some good and some not so good there, and how we actually have different types of sexual orientation out of that measurement there, and how we actually have difficulty identifying, at least objectively, what someone's true sexual orientation is. And so should we also include that person's own self-perceptions or feelings about that? We're going to spend a lot of time in the chapter, as does the textbook there, taking a look at especially one type of sexual orientation, and that's the homosexual or the gay and lesbian identity there, and the theories that have been proposed to try to explain why persons might be gay or lesbian there. And you're going to see they're going to boil down to either a biological sort of explanation or what we call a psychosocial explanation. Translation, it's all going to come down to that classic debate of nature versus nurture. Okay. We're also going to take a look there at the experience of being gay and the coming out process there. Also, some of the prejudices that people that are gay and lesbian experience there. You may have heard it called homophobia, but there's more of a general term now that we prefer called sexual prejudice. And we're going to close out the chapter taking a look at the intriguing issue that can or even should sexual orientation be changed, and what psychology and especially psychiatry has to say about that, at least in this modern time. That's some pretty interesting stuff you may have wondered about when it comes to a person's sexual orientation. Now, the this last chapter in the unit here is chapter 11. Adult sexual behaviors and attitudes. And this is the kind of material that I think most students think this human sexuality course is going to be all about, because this is what people actually do sexually, either by themselves through masturbation or through all kinds of various activities there with one or more other persons. And so one of the first things we're going to take a look at in the chapter is, how do we know what is quote-unquote normal when it comes to a person's sexual behavior? Are there any standards we can use there about that? And we're going to start drilling down into particular sexual behaviors and practices. For example, masturbation. You know, how common is it? Are there any sex differences? And of course, the big question, why? Why do we do it? Which may seem pretty obvious, but you may wonder, well, why do people masturbate if they're in a long-term, loving, sexually active relationship? Some pretty interesting stuff around that. We're also going to take a look at the role of, or the behavior of, sexual intercourse, that is penile vaginal penetration. You know, all the different positions, the role that those positions can play in people having sexual problems, so its role in sex therapy. We're also going to take a look at oral sex, you know, what the formal terms are for performing oral sex on male genitalia versus performing oral sex on female genitalia. And so some terminology there around that. And of course, again, why do we do it? We're also going to take a look at those that engage in anal sorts of stimulation. So there's certainly different types here. There's oral stimulation. There's physical objects that can be used, including one's fingers and hands, penetration. And certainly many people think, well, anal sex, isn't that something that only gay men do? Well, no, it's actually not. And it's something that any type of person, any type of sexual orientation can engage in there. And you might be surprised to learn how it's not that uncommon, at least through the survey data that we have. We're also going to examine, because it's going to play a role, this is a bit of table setting, this chapter here, because these behaviors play a role in the risk of sexually transmitted infections. We're going to take a look at how they might play a role there too. And we're going to round out the chapter there by taking a look at what is a so-called sexually healthy person. What does that mean? And you might find the answer very surprising there. And so that's really what we're going to cover in a nutshell there in this particular unit. And again, if I have any websites posted there within the unit for you to take a look at for a particular chapter, you know, please do check those out. Again, I try to pick things which are really interesting and intriguing, and you might find kind of fascinating in some way there too. So I will be posting some of those as well. So you might find that particularly intriguing for this chapter here. Chapter 8 on gender identity and gender roles. There's some really good stuff I'm going to post there about that. So definitely, check that out. Okay, I will see you in the lecture videos.